following presentation was recorded live in Los Angeles, California for the 24th Annual Convention of the International Association of Square Dance Callers. This is tape 13, Voice 2, General Session on Voice.
And I'm supposed to for the third time. I'm Arden Hopkin, and I teach singing for a living. And so I'm here to, I've got an actual presentation I'm prepared to make about how your voice works. And you might want to know that, but then again, you could care less and are looking for some more specific stuff. So we'll wait until this gentleman gets out of the room, because if it turns out that I don't need this overhead, he's going to be unhappy. What's your druthers? Earlier today, when I had a session, we just kind of took the stuff as it came, where the problems were, where the questions were. And I could do that again, but what I've got is a whole series of stuff. I teach a course at the university about how your voice works, why it works, some of the things that seem mysterious that aren't mysterious at all. They're just simple mechanics, biomechanics, that might help you as you go along when you run into some trouble in your own singing to figure out how to solve it. Or when you got somebody else who's got a problem. I'll give you some ideas on how to solve that. But I'm kind of flexible, so you let me know. There was a hand over here. But you can't talk until you get a microphone. Or were you raising your hand for something else, or you just reaching for not a word?
Yeah, actually what?
Yeah.
Do you feel it's worthwhile seeing that?
Yeah, the question is, do you feel it's worthwhile? Yeah. That's why I did it. That's why I did it. But on the other hand, if there's some stuff that's on your minds, when I did this a year ago, I didn't have it quite as tightly organized as this, and it took me 2 sessions to get through it. And I got an hour and a half to do this in, so I'm going to have to kind of truck it along. And I'm ready to go good, quick speed, if that's good. You want to come up and...
Just a quick question. You'll answer questions at the end of your...
You betcha. I will answer questions in between. I might even answer them as we're going along here. But you never know. Okay, first thing. Those of you there this morning, first overhead. Let's look at this. What is good singing? You ever thought about that for a second? Every time when I teach this course at the university, I ask that question, and I get all kinds of elaborate answers about where it's supposed to be placed and how you breathe. And that's that's not necessary. Those are the answers as far as I'm concerned. Good singing is something that you can do a whole bunch, and it doesn't hurt, and people like it. And that fits in square dancing, and it fits in any kind of singing that you want to do. So just kind of loosen your minds a little bit as to what constitutes good singing. Some people like that which doesn't feel good. You sing wrong, you wear out, people come up and say, "Oh, that's great, do it some more." And you say, "No, I can't, I don't have any throat left." So that's not good singing. Other people will say, "You're singing really good," and they say, "Oh, that's not very interesting, and there's not enough tension in that voice." And so you say, well, taste is a variable thing, but the ability to keep doing it again and again, that's really important. And that it doesn't hurt, that's also really important. I didn't say that it doesn't feel strange, because when you get it right, sometimes it feels unusual, and unusual is different than hurt. Okay, let's jump. This is kind of the overview of what I want to talk about. There are 5 areas, 4 of them are real, and then the 5th one's a compilation of them that I want to try to talk about today. I've kind of divided them up and given them topic heads. The first one is to make a joyful noise. That's how you make the sound out of your throat. How do you make your voice box do what it's supposed to do? And there's some real simple mechanical things that the voice does that if you can figure out how they work, you can take advantage of it and not have to hurt yourselves. Then that requires some air to be delivered through your voice box in order for the vocal cords to vibrate. And so one of the really important mechanical parts of singing is how do you manage your breath so that you can get there, get air to the vocal folds and through the vocal folds and keep them vibrating for the length of the whole phrase. And so there's some tricks that you have to be able to do to be able to keep your airstream going. And right up front, I'll say, if there is one single fault that untrained singers suffer from, it's that they don't use air, that they think that the training is supposed to help them hold the air back instead of use the air. But the truth of the matter is just the opposite. A recent scientific research done in Denver, there was a colleague of mine who took some trained singers and some untrained singers. And it didn't matter whether they were singing high or singing low, singing loud or singing soft. The trained singers used 3 times as much volume air as the untrained singers did. So that just goes right against the kind of stuff that most of us think. So air is really important, and so we'll talk about that. The next one is shifting gears, the ups and downs in singing. And I know from past experience with y'all that the issues of being able to reach high notes or being able to descend to catch low notes, notes that are outside your range, is one of those things that bugs the daylights out of you. And so you tinker with the speed of your record, or you find a harmony note, or you find some other solution. And you may not have to. You may just be able to figure out how to get your voice to stretch across all the range that it's supposed to be in. But it takes a little trick. The last one has to do with resonance in your voice, tweeters and woofers. I call it that because everybody has a bright quality to their voice and a dark quality to their voice. And being able to match those and mix those together is going to go a long way to help you get your voice to sound attractive and desirable. And then putting it all together, you got to take those four elements and find some kind of balance in them. And when you do, you'll have a functional voice. And it will be uniquely your own voice. It will not be like my voice or anybody else's. Every single one of us has a very unique voice. The structure of our larynx, while being generally the same, is uniquely our own. The length of the resonance tube from our larynx out to our mouth is uniquely our own. The tension level in the flesh in our body is different. Some have flabby flesh, some have firm flesh in the throat. Some people have bigger roofs of their mouths and some have smaller. Some have bigger mouth openings and smaller mouth openings. All of those things go together to make each one of us sound uniquely ourselves. Okay, that's the overview, and that's what I want to try to walk us through. Let's take a look at that first one. How do you make a sound? You've been doing that since before you knew that you were doing it, since you were born. But now that you're trying to do something sophisticated with it, you got to do it. There's a real simple basic law of physics that's the most important thing that you'll learn today if you haven't already learned it. It's called the Bernoulli principle, and it simply says that when air is in motion, it creates low pressure. Low pressure creates suction. It's the same principle that makes an airplane fly or make an atomizer run. It's the same thing that makes our voice work. That is, if you introduce an airstream with some sufficient speed, velocity, and enough volume of air traveling, that will create enough suction so that even though your vocal cords are at rest, they'll be sucked closed. Oh, and incidentally, you might want to take a look at this. This is a picture of what your vocal cords look like in their two different phases. The one there that's on the left is what your vocal cords look like when they're together. And the one on the right, what it looks like when they're open. Let me just point out some of the spots. This blue space right here that I've got marked, those are your there's muscles that are embedded inside the flesh of your vocal folds. And the blue and the green represent those kind of muscles. Now, you don't have to know what they are. I use that graphic for my class. This white area is a ligament, and it's a real stretchy thing like an elastic band that runs on the inside of your vocal folds and keeps the edges firm. When you're at rest and you're inhaling, this is what your vocal folds look like. There's an opening space here, air passes through. Then there's some muscles here and in a variety of other places that work to draw the vocal cords closed or get them close together. And when they get close together and an airstream is introduced to them through that opening, if that stream gets to be fast enough, it'll create suction enough so that the vocal folds will be drawn closed. And that's an important principle because you don't want to have to muscle your way through your voice. Let me just show you a quick little example just to confirm this. This is kind of an interesting little thing I'm doing here. I'm going to hold this thing and do this experiment at the same time. Here's your vocal folds, or sort of. They're two pieces of paper. I'm holding them up. You'd think that if I blow through these pieces of paper, the wind would cause the paper to blow apart. But the actual truth is that when I blow on them, they get drawn together. There's a suction that's created. Now, if you really think about that for a second, that's really nifty because you don't have to ever press your voice. As a matter of fact, when you press your voice together, you fight against that basic principle. It's a heck of a lot better to just let the wind do the job most of the time and not fight it. But most people who aren't trained feel like they have to push their voice. You all know what I'm talking about, don't you? You know what it feels like to push your voice. And then there are those certain days when your voice just kind of floats along on its own and you don't have to push it. Part of that has to do with you catching It's kind of like catching a wave and surfing. You just get on it and ride it, and away you go. So that's a really important principle. Whoops. Okay, let me get back to my graphic here. I can see that I'm going to be a mess here before the day's over. It'll take me an hour and a half to get myself put back together after I'm done with this. Take a look at this little picture that I want to show you. This is what the passageway coming out of your throat looks like. I think it's kind of interesting. God did a really magical thing, and I'd like to kind of tell you about it. Have you ever thought about this? You men, your vocal cords are about as long as my thumbnail is, from front to back. Half an inch or so, a little bit longer, maybe a little bit less. You ladies, your vocal cords are about as long as my fingernail on my little finger. So you got two of those things that vibrate together. Now you think about somebody like Pavarotti, who stands in front of an orchestra of 110 instruments. They're all tooting and blowing at their full force, and he's one fella, and those two little flaps of flesh are making enough noise to be heard over that crowd. That's pretty remarkable. That's really, really remarkable. If that's not a miracle, I don't know what a miracle is. But it's not just the muscles. It's not just the flesh. That's just the flapper part, the vibrator part. The issue is what you do with that sound when it's made, and that's where the real magic happens. Now watch how this air compression works. This is your throat. This is the trachea down here. And so our bodies are made in such a way so that the lungs are down here below, and you take some air in while your throat's open, and then you bring your vocal folds till they're almost closed. I've got them showed just like that. Inside your throat, beneath your vocal folds, there are some flesh that's called the conus elasticus. You don't have to remember that. It looks like a cone. And what it does is it takes this column of wind that's coming up out of your lungs, and it channels it. It funnels the wind close through that thin opening. Now, everybody that knows anything about aerodynamics knows that as all these air molecules get compressed up against that tight opening, they speed up in an effort to kind of get through there. It's kind of like taking a hose and leaving the nozzle wide open, and the water just flows out kind of easy, and then you tighten the nozzle down so that there's more molecules getting through a smaller space, and those molecules of water, they speed up a whole bunch. Well, that's the same thing that happens in your throat. So it's not like you have to blow a ton of wind to get your vocal cords to vibrate. It's already designed to draw that suction, just as I've showed you right there. So there are actually two forces that you use when you're trying to sing. One of them is simple aerodynamics. The other one is muscle power. That has a name. It's called myoelasticity. You can see that word right there. Myoelastics, it just simply means that that's muscle flexing. Muscles have elastic qualities to them, and so that principle works in singing. For instance, if you were to go back to that graphic when your throat was wide open and you were inhaling, that's a big opening. It'd take a lot of wind going before there'd be sufficient suction to draw those vocal cords to closure. But eventually you could do that if you could get enough wind going. If, however, you close your vocal folds, and that's where the muscles come in, and get them to where they're really close together but not touching, then it doesn't take nearly as much breeze to get them in motion. And so it's kind of a coordination between getting them to the point where they're just really efficient and not getting them to the point where they're tightly pressed together. So there's a combination of those two things. And you get different results. And here's where it's going to start getting interesting, I hope. You got several different kinds of sound that people make. And they fall pretty much into these three different categories. You either get people that make very aspirate sounds, and they talk real breathy, and there's a kind of a weakness to it, but they're really friendly, and they're nice and warm. Or you kind of get the drill sergeant who's really tight and pressed and says, Alaman left, and if you don't, I'm going to punch your lights out. You don't say that, but that's what your voice says. That's the quality of your sound. And the other one, it says, if you wouldn't mind, do-si-do, maybe, if you think. And that's not enough of a command to make anybody do anything. So there's not just efficiency, there's also some expectation of power and command and so forth. Now, in between those two things, the aspirate kind, which is made up of just almost entirely aerodynamics, very little muscle energy. And on the opposite extreme, myoelastic, where there's no air going at all, but there's sure a lot of muscle tension. Somewhere in between those two things is the right place to be. And so you can try that for yourselves. First, try making a real tight, kind of grunting sound. Just try it. Feel what it feels like. Yeah, that's not very much fun. Now give me the limp-wristed, spirit kind. Yeah, that kind. And yeah, that's really nice. And it's love and peace and, and harmony. Yes. And that's not going to get it either. Somewhere in between is where you want to be. So you start out and you go, no good. Ha, ha, also no good. In between, and you can do this. One of them is UH. That's got a hard glottal stop on it. The other one is HA, 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 where you get an H starting it. And then take the H off of it. Pretend that the H is silent, but it's still there. And go, ah, ah, ah. You got it. That's a way to help yourselves. And you wives, when you're listening to your husband's call or vice versa, or when you're caller training, start listening to the sound. It makes a certain sound. The sound that it makes when it's muscle tight is a very bright kind of a sound, kind of edgy. This is the kind that makes when there's lots of air flowing. You know, this is the psychologist in us all. And just like Papa Bear and Mama Bear and Baby Bear, it just feels just right when you get the balance, just so. So a well-tuned voice right here at the vocal box is going to have both brightness and warmth in it. If it's too bright, then it's not quite right. If it's too warm, it's not quite right. Somewhere in between. And so you can listen. Your spouses can listen and say, that's a nice balance. That's a little bit too lazy. That's a little too warm. That's a little too uptight. Take a pill and just settle down. But it also has a feel to it. And it feels tight. When you make a pressing sound, it feels tight in your throat. And it feels really loose when you got a lot of air flowing. You don't feel any strength or power. But it feels just right when you get it in between. Now, there's another way that you can kind of get at this. Everybody sigh. Ah. Good thing to do about 3:30 in the afternoon, wouldn't you say? Just watch. I'm not going to change my throat at all. I'm just going to increase the stream of air. So watch. Ah. 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 Doesn't that strike you as weird? It doesn't just get breathier and breathier and... Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't think of the implications there. No, let me come back on that one, and I'll come at this another way. Let's see. What I'm getting at is that my voice just didn't keep getting breathier and breathier and breathier. The more breath I added, it got clearer and clearer and clearer. And what ended up happening was that I finally managed to increase enough of the airstream so that it hit that minimum bottom level where there was enough suction for the vocal cords to be closed. You all can do that yourselves. You want to try? Okay, make a really breathy sound. Ah, that's good. Now, keep your throats feeling the same and add air to it. Ah. Good. And another one. Ah. Hey, that's all right. Okay, so you got two different ways you can go at that. And don't treat this too lightly. This is probably the most important thing. If you have any trouble with your throat, you can, right here in this little box, this little 4-inch square, is where you can do a lot of good by just learning not to close the muscles so tightly. Don't press against them. We have in our culture these are the anthropologists that are saying this, that we have built into our voice box, the purpose that it's there is to be a sphincter muscle, not to vibrate and to talk with, but to take a deep breath, clamp closed, and then fight, or run, or work. And that's where we get that sort of heavy lifting, grunting kind of sound. The voice box, the vocal folds, clamp closed, they compress the air in the lungs, that firms the torso, and you can then do vigorous activities. Part of the trick of singing is to have vigor in your torso, supporting and breathing and all, but a very loose vocal valve. And that's the real trick. Just stay balanced in your voice, in the vocal valve, in the voice box, and you're going to be okay. Any questions so far? Bless you.
Well, I find that when I talk in a
Oops.
normal voice, I find that when I talk in a normal voice, people are always saying, huh. But when I raise my voice, they don't always like the way it sounds. You know what I mean? With my husband especially. He says, I can't hear you. But when he does hear me, he don't like what he hears. You know what I mean?
So, that's a really good suggestion, and that's going to have to do with that gear changing. There's some really interesting sort of cutting-edge stuff that's coming out. It's only been since about World War II that people have understood the principles. Well, actually, I guess sonar got started before that, but the whole principle of acoustics is a relatively recent science. And it's been applied to the singing and the speaking voice in the last 40 years, and there have been some really interesting things come out of it. And I'm going to share with you some of the really interesting things that are sort of out on the cutting edge right now that help us to understand why it is that our voices function the way they do. But if you have a hard time being heard when you're speaking low, and you're heard better but liked less when you go high, then that's an interesting challenge. Notice I didn't answer that one. Okay, next one is this is called supporting your habit. So you decide you want to make that nice little balanced voice sound. And so that takes a certain stream of air that's higher than what you normally use. Remember I said it's about 3 times as much as the normal person uses. A good singer will use a lot more air molecules than is normal. And it's just like a lubricant in your car. If you use a lot of air, your voice is going to last a lot longer. And if you don't, your voice is going to run out and grind to a halt, just like a car without oil in it. So you got to come up with some ways. Steady as she goes is what I chose to title this, and that means that you got to be able to have an airstream that remains constant from the beginning of the phrase until the end of the phrase. And that's not normal for most of us. We have a tendency that when we go higher, we push harder, and when we go lower, we depressurize. So there's an inconsistency. If we're singing a scale or singing a song that makes us go up, our bodies have a tendency to go, and then we kind of drive that top note. And the airstream isn't constant. You can find that out by yourselves by doing something called a lip buzz or a lip trill. I'll show it to you, and we're going to come back to it again later. But you say, take the tune, My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. That's the way you do a lip trill. And most people do this. And you know why that happens? Because all of a sudden the stream of air isn't sufficient to cause the lips to buzz. It's a dead giveaway. Try that. You'll make everybody go on. Where's my lip sound? I've got to get this thing. Okay. Ready? Okay, so there were a number of you that you can put your uppers back in, and we'll try this again. Okay, lip trills is a good way for you to kind of discover whether or not you got enough airstream to make your vocal cords vibrate. Incidentally, when you're doing this, like that, motorboating, as you'd call it when you were a little kid, there's an interesting thing's happening. Your vocal cords are vibrating, or else you wouldn't get any sound. That kind of sound. Without my voice, it sounds like this. And so it's a way to trick your vocal cords into vibrating without knowing that they're doing it. The vocal valve has this tendency to think, oh, I got to work. Here comes some air. Got to save it. Block it up. And that's not a good plan. So by using the lip buzz, you get your vocal cords and they think, oh, good. I'm not responsible for controlling this stream of air. There's a couple of bigger bubbas out there at the front that are doing it. And so the body gets to thinking that the constriction is here at the lips. And so the vocal cords just kind of go into a kind of a nice, passive, easy vibration pattern. We're going to come back to that later as we talk about going higher and going lower, because that's an important issue. But a lip buzz is a way that you can discover whether or not you've got enough air going. Or if you're teaching some square dance callers and you think, by gum, that guy sounds like his voice is tight, just ask him to take one of his calls and do it on a lip buzz. And if he goes, then you know that he doesn't have it. There's not enough airstream moving. It's a real easy kind of home remedy, kind of like a home pregnancy test or something like that. Okay, but you have to find a balance there. You got to find a balance between too much air. If you don't have enough, you don't get that nice, easy phonation pattern. But if you get too much, you run out of breath before the end of the phrase. And so that's a balancing game that has to enter into that. And so the next little thing is what I call is let the contest begin. For the last 400 years, people who've studied voice talk about what they call the vocal contest. It's actually a breath contest. And it's a contest between the muscles that help you to inhale and the muscles that help you to exhale. Everybody take a deep breath down low in your middle section and just let it settle and hold it for a sec, okay? Breathe in. You know what that feels like? It feels real full down at the bottom of your ribs. You can go ahead and let it out. I could have gone on longer, but I had mercy upon you. But now, the next thing that I want you to do, and this is what a singer has to learn how to do, is to take that feeling of inhalation and then hold on to that feeling of inhalation while you're exhaling. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Try it. Inhale. Now hold on to that expanded feeling while you exhale. Now do it and get a lip buzz out of it. You guys are saying, I'm in stasis. My breath's not moving at all, but nobody will know. Come on, you got to take your breath in. No, time out. You let that out. Here's a dead giveaway that the breathing's not going right. That's not the muscle God gave us to breathe with. The muscle He gave to breathe with is the diaphragm, and it sits right here in your body, splits your chest cavity from your abdominal cavity, and when it flexes, it goes down. And you'll feel it expand right here in the middle, and it'll expand on your ribs, and you may even feel it expand in the back. And if you don't, you're not using your diaphragm. All I'm doing is taking my rib cage and lifting it. That does create a little more space, and then collapsing my rib cage on my lungs. Well, that doesn't really transfer very much air, and it's not very coordinated because the bone structure, it's like playing an accordion with arthritis. It just doesn't move much, you know. But this muscle is built so that it can move a great deal, and you can inhale a great deal, and you can exhale a great deal. So you might as well figure out where it's at. Did this morning. Everybody just try to imagine drinking a martini, using a martini straw and drinking a thick milkshake. In other words, make it a real small opening here and go... Oh, that was chocolate caramel. And what's going to happen is you're going to feel some real vigorous activity in your rib cage. Everybody try that. The oxygen already got a whole bunch less in the room. Yeah. Okay, so you can feel that energy. It gets real strong there. That's the muscle that you should inhale with. And if you ever go down to the neonatal ward, you don't see those little babies laying there on their backs breathing with their chests. Quite the contrary. It's their little tummies that go up and down, and that's because they're breathing from their diaphragm. When we came from God, we knew how to do that. Somehow, as we get older, we forget how to do that, and it's time to rediscover that. Well, I don't know. That may be it, but it's actually a little higher than where our stomach is, right up there. This little triangular region where your ribs part, that's where you can really feel the action of the diaphragm. Okay, so I want you to breathe in like you just did, like this labored breathing. You can actually just breathe in through your nostrils. If you're as stuffed up as I am, that'll be just like a martini straw anyhow. You ready? So inhale. Now keep that expanded feeling and blow out for 10 seconds. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Not bad. And some of you have more breath than that. There's a gentleman at the back whose eyes went crossed while he was doing that. But that's all right. The kind of singing that you all do requires you to sing phrases that range anywhere from as little as 2.5 seconds. Usually it's about 4.5 to 6 seconds. And rarely is it longer than 6 seconds. That means that you don't really have to master breathing techniques like an athlete does, like a singer that has to sing for 20 seconds. And there are songs where the phrases go on and on and on and on and on and on, and you think, my goodness sakes, they must have a hose stuck in somewhere to keep that air coming along. But you don't have to do that. So you don't have to exaggerate this thing. Nevertheless, you want to keep a steady stream of breath going all the way across, finding the balance between a high enough airflow to get the vocal cords sucked closed and a low enough so that it'll carry you across 6 or 8 seconds. That's not too hard to do, I don't think. We already tried the milkshake through the martini straw. Let's find the muscles that you use to exhale with. Blow on the back of your hand and just feel what happens in your abdomen. Now, we get two probable responses out of this. When you did that, raise your hand if the muscles in your abdomen contracted inward and upward. Raise your hand if the muscles pushed out and away against your belt. Yeah, that's the minority position, and that's normal, but it's just about the right proportion. The way the muscles are supposed to work is in and up. Try that again and see if that's true. You'll feel a contraction, and those muscles are designed to contract inwards, and as they do, they take all of your intestines and they press them up against the underside of the diaphragm. The diaphragm goes up, and air comes out your throat. That's what's supposed to happen. However, there's a significant minority. In this case, it was about, 30% of the population, and that's about what I'm used to everywhere I go, where the strategy is different, and you push down and away. That isn't necessarily, it's not the way that I think is the right way, but the real issue is whether or not you get air out and whether you can sustain it. But those muscles that you just felt, those are the muscles that you should be exhaling with. Now, when you do this activity again, inhaling and then breathing out over 10 seconds, that vigorous energy that you felt while you were blowing on the back of your hand, that's what it feels like when you exhale. You also found out what it feels like when you inhale, and you want to find a balance for both of those. So here you go, inhale through your nose. Now breathe out as if blowing on the back of your hand. You know, if you practice this long enough, by the time you're 60, you'll be able to blow out all of those candles. Fat and skinny, I've talked about in other occasions. I'll just quickly touch on it. And that is, when the image that I got, actually this is a personal story. You get out of the shower and you look sideways at yourself in the mirror and you go, uh-oh, my tummy isn't where it belongs. And so you find the muscles to pull your tummy in, to make yourself skinny. And those are the muscles that you use to exhale with. By the same token, if you say, okay, nobody's watching, and you let the muscles go, that helps. So that's the fat part, and that's the skinny part, and that's the fat part, and that's the skinny. And you get that cadence going like that, then lo and behold, about the time your tummy is going skinny, you'll discover that you got breath flowing. And there's another nice little thing that goes along with that little drill. It firms up your tummy. That wasn't what I was going to say. That just kind of popped out. The thing I was going to say is that when you are pressing to get air out and you just pop loose and go to that fat phase, then it's amazing how fast air will come in. You don't have to go and be ready to sing again. You just go, and away you go, and you're ready to sing. Just by popping loose down there, you can go back in motion. And I know that some of you, particularly when you get into patter calling, are looking for any place that you can find to catch a breath any which way you can. And that's the way that you can do it. So just that little fat skinny thing is worth doing. Now, if you're trying to expand your breath capacity, all you do is that thing that we just did. Now, we did it, and you were up to 10 seconds. But let's say that you want to go up to 15 seconds. Wouldn't it be great to have twice as much air available to you than you ever need? You never again in your whole lives ever have to worry about running out of breath? Well, you can do that. You just take a breath, and if your goal is to have a phrase that lasts 8 seconds long, that's longer than anything that you guys are likely to come across. So get to the point where you can exhale for 15 or 16 seconds. And you start out by just blowing out for as long as you can. Now, there's a little warning to that. There's a point at which your whole body starts to turn inside out and collapse downward. You can't get any value out of that anymore, so don't push yourself beyond that. As soon as your chest starts to collapse, then you're out of breath, or else you're over 40. I don't know which of those two things comes first. Yeah. Furniture's been moving around in my house. The chest is falling into my drawers. Oh, I got a couple other nice little pictures I wanted to show you. It's far enough after lunch so that it's not likely to bother you. That little green stuff, that's where your diaphragm is. You can see here's your spine at the back. We've taken a cadaver and just kind of cut the whole front face of the body off and taken all of the intestines and everything out. And there's the spine. And there are fibers that attach right down next to the back, right here at the very back. And they kind of arch up and over. And they attach out at the sides on the ribs underneath side. And it just serves like a great big dome. But when it flexes downward. And when it relaxes, it goes back up. So it's really the muscle to inhale with. It participates in exhalation only because it controls how fast the air goes out. So when you hear people talking about supporting from your diaphragm, that's actually a misnomer, except that it's not entirely crazy. You don't support because your muscles can only pull. They never push. The diaphragm pulls down this way. The abdominal muscles pull this way. It's actually the abdominal muscles that are doing the supporting. The diaphragm just kind of controls how fast that breath works. And then the other side, this is what abdominal muscles look like without all the fat surrounding them. There are several different layers of muscle. This green part right here, the rectus abdominis, that's the six-pack on the guys that you see on TV and the girls that are doing the ab crunchers. They don't participate much in the singing process. They just make you look pretty. The next ones, however, are important. Let me see. They're kind of cut away, but you see the internal oblique muscles. You see their fibers that just run like that all the way around the body. And that orange band right out there would be laid over the top of that. And then this purple band right underneath here, the transverse abdominis muscles, they serve the purpose to be like a multiply tire so that if you spring a leak in one level, there's still two more layers to keep you from herniating all completely. And they all do the same job. The fibers flex inward, and as they flex inward and get shorter, everything is pressed up against the lower side of the diaphragm, and that's how you breathe out. And these muscles carry on clear to the back, around back, clear to the spine, right in the lower back. So, I don't know, some of you that square dance call a lot may find yourselves at the end of an evening with the lower part of your back just really killing you. It may be because you're sway back. But it could also be just simply because you're supporting properly and those muscles down there are doing their job. And after a while, you get tired. I was singing last night at a performance of the St. Matthew Passion in Salt Lake City. And after about 20 minutes, and there was an orchestra and there was a big audience out there and I was having to really put out. After about 20 minutes, I sat down between numbers and my back went crack. And I went, oy. That was that. Okay. Now, nothing personal here, but we're going to talk a little bit about posture. Because the truth of the matter is, you got to learn how to align your body right if you're going to get the best results. And there are some common posture problems that we have in our society. The one on the far left is the proper posture. There's this curvature in that lady's spine, but her alignment is pretty good. The fellow just to her right, the round-shouldered sort, not so good, because what it does is it takes the weight of the rib cage, collapses it down on the lungs so that when you try to inhale, the inhalation process is inhibited. It's not good for singing. It's troublesome. Slumping, likewise, the same problem. It has multiple problems, not just for what it does to the breathing, but the alignment that happens up here in the throat is also very awkward and needs to be corrected. And then the hollow, this is the girl that went through puberty at age 12 and was so self-conscious she could hardly stand it. And so she tried to hide what was sticking out in front. And they developed, this is most common with women who develop early, they just kind of hide like this. And as a result of that, when they're fully grown up and everybody else has grown up and it's no longer an important issue, they still walk around as if they'd never gone through puberty. And then that makes it really hard for them to sing. Then the ramrod straight fella is equally as bad. The amount of tension necessary to hold a person in that rigorous posture is really destructive in terms of singing. Okay, now there's some ways that you can check yourselves for posture to make sure that you're aligned well. One of them is just, let me get back to my sheet of paper here, buried it somewhere in this mess so you can see it. Here's some ways that you can do that. You can start off by saying neck long, head back. Just something so simple as that. Get your neck as long as it's comfortable to go, and make sure that your head is back. Not so much that it's stiff. That's the military kind. Just so it's nice and good and long, and your head's tall. Head back. The other one is that you ought to have your rib cage elevated in a kind of a noble posture. No, that's too much. Just a nice, easy, noble posture. The other one is weight balanced on the hips evenly. This kind of singing when you're slung off onto one side and then you swing off to the other side is not particularly helpful in terms of breathing. It kind of throws everything out of balance. You need to stand on 2 feet. We weren't born to be flamingos. We're born to be human beings. So you want to be on 2 feet. Or another way to do it is just to line up your ears over your shoulders, over your hips, over your knees, and over your ankles. That sounds like that old spiritual song. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. That's, well, anyhow. Stand up and let's try a few drills to kind of get that so. First thing I'd like to have you do is I'm going to describe what I'm going to do, then I'm going to put my microphone down, heaven forbid, so that we can do this together. The first thing I want you to do is reach up to the sky, stretch long, reel up and long and tall. Now, I'm going to get you to let your arms down in a second, but don't do it yet. When you let your arms down, but leave your rib cage in its same elevated posture. Come on down. That's like, whoa, that's really uptight, isn't it? You can also let these little muscles here go so that it's nice and long. All right, that's a good way to find it. You can find your posture that way. Another way that you can do it is just stretch your neck good and long. That's right. And now look at the person beside you. Well, you can't everybody look at the person beside you. You've got to take turns doing this. And kind of line up to make sure that the ears are right over the shoulders. That's the most critical sin most of the time. And that is that the head thrusts forward so that the ears don't line up over the shoulders. When that happens, then it starts putting some pressures on the voice box that you don't want. So you just get yourself so that your ears stand over your shoulders. Can you do that? Okay, it's not a hard deal. You got to kind of check each other out. You know, it's really funny. When I get my students who are not used to this sort of thing lined up, I always give them an assignment to go walking down the corridor to the drinking fountain, and they feel like the bride of Frankenstein, or they feel like Frankenstein. They're so long and stretched tall. Okay, go ahead and have a seat. Okay, any questions about breathing? Those two systems by themselves are the important foundations for any singing. We could stop right now, and if you were to master those things, you'd like it better than if you didn't master those things. They go on beyond. There's 2 other levels that I want to talk about, but those are the most important foundational ones. You want to come to the mic? We don't have the portable. It's without a battery today. Died.
When we put our hands up, and I felt my chest go out and even up somewhat, and then I brought him back down, but I felt uncomfortable with my chest this high. Was I correct to be up here, or should I let it relax a little?
You were probably correct. As I look at your posture right now, you let it down. That's the posture you should be in, and you say, "My goodness sakes, I never lived that way." I'm going to have to go. I'm going to have to go buy a shirt 3 sizes bigger, pop my buttons. Yeah, most of us live our lives in a kind of a collapsed posture. One of the reasons we do that is because very few of us do physical labor anymore. And those of us who still do, or 2 generations ago when physical labor was done a lot, those things just kind of took care of themselves. Because if you were going to do any lifting, you learned how to do it, and you got the strength to do it, and you adopted the posture. But what we do is sit and watch TV a lot. Collapse in a chair. So that felt pretty unnatural to you, and probably to the most of you. That elevated chest felt artificial. And if you were to kind of hold on to that for a period of time, some muscles in the middle of your back would start to complain a little bit because they're not used to doing the task that they were designed to do. Okay, let's run right along now. Shifting gears, getting highs and lows. That's another one of the challenges for a lot of singers. Square dancer is not the only ones. There are several options, and I'm going to kind of walk you through them here. I've got some graphics to show it, to kind of help you visualize it. A vocal register, that's a series of notes in your voice that sounds the same because it's made the same. And parenthetically, it feels the same. And we'll take a look at that here in just a second. There are three common options. There are several other options besides, but there are three common options for how people look at how a voice works. In a low voice. Let's do that lip buzz. And as a matter of fact, that two registers model is what most children have. When they start going to elementary school and start playing around with music as in their early childhood, that's all they got. They got a high voice and they got a low voice, and there's a big demarcation between them, and they have a lot of fun playing back and forth across that demarcation line. There are some adults who still pretend to be children, and they're yodelers. And the reality is that they hold on and capitalize on that two-register model and get really good at flipping back and forth across that chasm instead of blending the two of them together. And it's a real highly developed art form. And so that's all that's happening, is that those people who are playing with yodeling are taking advantage of the differences between those two voices, and they get good enough so that they can pinpoint pitches on either side of that dividing line and make something that's really unique and special. No, juvenile. Yes, yeah. So that's a real common one. You'll discover this here. Let's just do a lip buzz. I'll demonstrate it for you once. You listen to the quality of my voice change as it does. It'll just change gears. You can hear it. It flips from one to the other. Everybody's voice is built that way. The truth of the matter is, God made us to have two registers, but we've gone and mucked it up and made more than that. There is embedded right down in our larynx one set of muscles for raising pitch, and they control the high part of the voice. And there's another set of muscles embedded inside the vocal folds themselves, also inside the larynx, that are the heavy, weighty muscles. Most men use the heavy weight muscles, the chest voice muscles is what they're commonly called, when we talk. And so we're really good at that set of muscles. But we don't use the high voice muscles because we don't want to sound effeminate. And so they get weak on us. For women, it's a kind of a mixed bag. Some women talk down in their chesting range. Some women talk in their high voice range. Women have less stigmatization with the inflection of their voices, so generally women have a better access to a wider range than men do. However, women who square dance call are really troubled because they're in a man's world and they're trying to outmen men in terms of getting the strength in their voice. And so my observation has been that women who are square dance callers are like men in that they have the heavy weight to their voice and have a difficult time going upwards in pitch most of the time. Okay, so you try that, the lip buzz thing. So join me. And raise your hand if you got an even split right about the middle there. Did you get two different kinds of voice qualities, or was it hard to tell? Let's go one more time. I don't know what you feel, but I hear two. I hear a voice that's kind of like speaking range, and then it flips up in a kind of what a man would call a falsetto quality, a lighter quality. Probably that's similar to for a girl. However, there's another option there, and that is, as we get more and more sophisticated as singers, we discover that high voice and the low voice have a medium range in which they are capable of overlapping with each other. And most of us, in order to avoid that horrible split between those two, experiment with that overlapping quality, and so over a period of time, we develop three qualities to our voice. There's a low chesting quality, and the high head quality, and then there's a fairly substantial middle range where you got a little bit of head quality and a little bit of chest quality. I'd like to have you feel that in your own bodies, and I've got some interesting things to say. So stand up about now, and I want you to find the chesting quality in your voice. You'll do that by saying something low range. Put your hand right on your sternum, and you'll feel your hand vibrate when you make these noises. Just say, shaw. You don't have to force it. It'll go there just fine. Again, shaw. You are all involved in pressing phonation at that point. Shaw. I'm looking for that middle balance. Shaw. Good. And you can feel it vibrate right on your sternum. Okay, this is the interesting thing that I was going to mention to you. There's an acoustician, voice scientist, who took cadaver's larynx and cut it, quartered it, so that he only had one vocal fold there, and he put it up against a piece of glass, so that he could watch through the glass and see what the vibration patterns of the voice were as he set electrodes to fire certain muscles. And when he fired the chest voice muscles, the vocal cords thickened up. The one vocal fold thickened up, and you could see that turn thick on the glass. And that opens up a whole new concept to what's going on in our voices when we're in that one mode as compared to the other mode. And according to this most recent finding, when our vocal cords kind of get thick and square up, where we're in a low range, then as they part, they don't just come open and close like this. They kind of wave open. They start to part at the bottom. They come open at the top. They get sucked closed at the bottom, and they wave back and forth. And that creates a very complex sound wave that does something to trigger some vibrations in our chests. And so we call it chest voice. That's where it gets its name. But it has its origins in the configuration of the vocal folds. Do you even care? I think it's pretty neat. But when you get up into the high range, those muscles discontinue their play, and some other muscles work to lengthen that vocal ligament, that white thing that I showed you on the chart before. And when that happens, the vocal folds are no longer in a squared pattern, but they turn into a V shape. And so they only have a very thin edge vibrating. The pattern is a much lighter, less complex thing, and it has a tendency to vibrate up in our heads. So that's why we call it head voice. So head voice, chest voice, that's where those nicknames come from. And there seems to be now some reasonable reason to say that that's a decent name for them. But there's that middle range where you get a little of both. Now, having said that, come back and do the chesting quality one more time. Shaw. Now jump up just a ways, up right about here. Shaw. Now, you don't feel it. There's still some vibration going on in your chest, but now the vibrations have migrated a little bit. Where'd they go? They start moving up into the upper part of your throat, maybe into your mouth, across the bottom part of your nose, somewhere like that. If that's so, what's happened is that you've now started to mix those two muscles together. And so you got now a little bit of head, some chest. Now go a little higher than that. Let me set the pitch for you. Shaw! Again. Shaw! Some of you are having a hard time going after that. Let me show you. I'm going to do it, and I'll try to get you to do it. Shaw! 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 That's called the call range. Not the square dance call range, but when you're going to call somebody, it's up in that range. You know, hey, you, come back over here with my wallet. It's that kind of thing. Bring my wife back. Or something. Go away. That range falls. We come at that in our speaking range very naturally without ever thinking about it a second time. But lo and behold, when we go to sing, it's like, oh my goodness, a high note. And the truth, you wives, the last time that your husbands watched the Super Bowl, they knew where that was. You stupid! We know how to make those sounds, except that we don't associate them with singing. They're healthy sounds. And if you make them right, you got access to a wider range. Now, listen and see if you can't hear a change in the quality. It's still my voice. Shaw, shaw, shaw. Other than pitch, do you hear quality change? I feel quality change. And the reason that happens is because the interplay between that light voice muscle and the heavy voice muscle, they start uniquely chest, they start to mix together, then they start to mix a little bit more where the head quality is greater than the chest quality. And then if I go up to the very top, the chest quality disappears. I can't feel it vibrating in my chest at all anymore. And lo and behold, I've got another quality. So all of those ranges are available to every human being. Now, you notice I'm only taking you to the low one and the lower middle one and the upper middle one. And then there's the one up above there that's kind of my hysterical voice. And most of us don't use that in public very often. And so we probably wouldn't when we square dance call. But it's a pretty neat thing to be able to find. For most men, that you ask them to sing high, and all they can do is go falsetto. But the truth is, there's a male head voice up there. You hear it? It's a little stronger. a little scratchy today. But it's still there, and it's the same kind of pattern as the falsetto. It's just reinforced and stronger. So let's see if we can find that. I want you to start by making a squealing NG quality. Nah. Nah. One of the ways you can tell that you've got your head voice found is that it'll withstand a certain amount of pressure. It'll withstand a crescendo. You get louder, in other words. Falsetto. Here's a falsetto. Listen. I can't get much louder on that. But listen to the head voice. If I can find it. You can play with that and it'll join together and not crack across and yodel. But you have to find it. It's in there. Every one of you's got access to that. You say, oh yeah? Yeah, it is. Yeah. But it's a scream that's managed. It's the same pattern as a scream, but it's managed. And most people when they scream are not thinking about tone quality. And so they kind of rip on their throat. You don't have to rip on your throat. You just have to learn how to do it. There are other ways of getting at it. But in essence, if you can find those ranges in your speaking voice, you can gain access to them in your singing voice. Here's one of the ways to do it. Find the low and the next one above that. Do that with me now. Sha, sha. Now glide between them. Sha. Not hard, is it? Now take the lower middle one and the upper middle one. I'll demonstrate. Sha, 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 sha. Glide between. Sha. That's good. Now take the higher middle one and go down to the low one. Sha. You know, when you're driving to a dance, this is a pretty decent vocal warm-up to do. Of course, keep the windows up. But it's not hard to do. And it's just it's like any other skill, muscle coordinating skill. If you do it, you'll get better at it. If you don't do it, you won't get better at it. If you do it a lot, you'll get much better at it. Now, if you want to find the high voice, there are a number of ways to do that. For more sophisticated singing, what I do is I'll show you the drill. Sha, sha, sha. I go light on it, and that's the only way I can find the note. Now, you guys try that. You'll go, sha. You'll flip over to the falsetto because you haven't been working with it a while. That I just showed you is the real best way to find it, but you have to get at it, kind of sneak up on it over a period of years to get the coordination. In the short term, the other one, to kind of whine, is the best way to kind of come at it. So, and it's not right at the breaking point. You want to go way up above the breaking point and then slide back down on it from above. So would you join me on that one? Whine! Again, whine! Yeah, and so when you're way up above there, you can get it and then find it and glide it on back down. Next trick is to go whine and get back up again. Try it. Whine! Now let me ask you a question. How many of you are ready to go out and start incorporating that into your calling right now? Go ahead and have a seat. So, here are the drills that you can do to kind of develop those things. You can speak it low, call it middle, or hysterical high. I just put some names on them to help you to remember what those are. Generally, in a man's voice, the speaking range is the chest range. The calling range is the middle voice, and the hysterical is the football voice. Lip buzzes are good ways to find that. And initially, what's going to end up happening is you'll do this. Here's an example. I'm singing pitches, right? That's the sound. When I open my mouth, that's the sound that's coming out of my vocal cords. However, if you were guys to start doing that, you'd end up doing this. Because you're wusses. Because you're so afraid that your voice will crack on you that you back off into that falsetto. That's been the classic cop-out for men for many, many years. So get over it. You know, just work past that thing. It'll crackle, it'll bobble on you, but, you know, that's just the way it is. You got to get some strength in there as you go along. Slurs and glides, we just did those, right? We just went, ah. One caveat there. That means that your larynx shouldn't go up and down while you're doing that. So while you can just lay your finger right on your vocal, on your Adam's apple, and just do this for me. Ah. If you did it right, your larynx shouldn't have gone up and down. Should not go up and down. It should be the job of the muscles that are built inside the larynx to do that. If, however, your larynx drags up when the pitch goes higher, there are some suspensory muscles. They attach to your jawbone, they attach to the back of your skull, and then some other ones attach down below to the sternum and the clavicles. They're suspender muscles, and they leave the larynx just hanging loose in the throat. And if those muscles are involved in trying to help you change pitch by dragging on the larynx in a peculiar kind of way, then you really will have a great deal of difficulty gaining access to the whole of your range. If your larynx climbs up in your throat as you go up higher in the scale, that's a pretty good signal that you're not going to be able to get access to your whole range. You want to leave that thing hanging alone, just not high, not low. Everybody just lay your finger on your Adam's apple and take a surprise breath inhalation. That's the position your Adam's apple ought to be in all the time while you're singing. Not high, not low, just kind of a low rest position. Not dragged down low and not raised up high, just right in the middle. And then you figure out, oh, how do you go between that without your larynx going up and down? And it's just a question of trial and error to figure out how to do that. Okay, any questions there before we go on to the next one? How am I doing? How's time? 10 minutes? Yeah. $3:30 to 5, right? Hubba, okay. Oh, then let me show you some nifty little graphics. This is what I was talking about with the two voices. You got the light voice and the heavy voice. We looked at that one. Yeah. Oops. Light voice, heavy voice. That's a real common way of doing things. Here's another one. This, you get a kind of a middle or a mixed register. And that's where you get the middle of your voice, and you got some head quality and some chest quality mixed in there too. And singers that get really sophisticated go on and get another quality beyond that. They take this heavy voice quality and do that. And then they get a light voice quality and do that. And over a period of years, you can develop it where there's a seamlessness in your voice where you can't hear those dividing lines anymore. Classical singers spend their whole lives trying to figure out how to do that. Square dance callers care less about that. Yodelers, for example, exploit the difference, but there are lots of singers that don't worry about getting the connection between all of those. So that may be a level that you're not interested in, and it's all right. But it's all gradually accomplished through these gliding, slurring activities. Oh, microphone.
If you're trying to achieve both positions, let's say you want to yodel and you want to be a classic singer, can you do both with enough practice, or do you destroy one for the other?
No, you can do both. Yeah. Most people don't take the time to do it because they don't have the interest, but there's certainly no reason why you can't learn how to do both. It's just a different activity. That's all. Okay, so those are the models. This kind of thing allows a person to be able to go, oh, and have no chinks or blurps in it anywhere. Just go smoothly back and forth. And when somebody develops that skill, it's really, really impressive. But it takes a lot of time and a lot of practice to do. Okay, woofers and tweeters. Sounds like a nudie bar, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I've got a picture that I kind of like to show you. Once you get this basic sound vibrating in your throat, it really doesn't sound any more attractive than a duck call. That's all it is. It's an amazing thing that the sound, when you get two vocal cords vibrating together and no extra resonance put on them, they sound just like a duck call. That's about it. And somehow, as that sound passes up through the resonance tract, which is about 7.5 inches long, it's refined into the sound that we hear as the human voice. It's a remarkable thing. Our vocal tract has several chambers in it, several nooks and crannies in it that make it kind of interesting. Let's see. Look at those. You don't have to name these and remember these names. They're just there because I was just teaching this class last week, and so I had it on my brain. But there's the upper part of your throat. That's the back of the throat, or the oropharynx is what it's really called. And that's kind of where all the woofer quality comes in your voice. There's the front of the mouth. That's the tweeter part. I'll explain that in a few minutes a little bit better. Then there's the laryngopharynx. That's way down in the larynx itself. There's a little chamber that produces some real high-frequency sounds that opera singers use a lot. And singers that have to sing through an orchestra, you remember I was telling you Pavarotti has the ability to cut through an orchestra. The way he does that is he's learned how to tap into that sound and get it really strong, and it just penetrates like a bullet because it's a real high frequency. So the laryngopharynx, then the nose, the nasopharynx, the space up above the hard palate. It's not really very much of a resonator. It's a damper. It kills some sounds, and when you try to mix it in there, it creates nasal consonants, and the rest of the time we don't much like it in our language. There are some other languages that value nasality. We don't. So it really isn't very much of the mix there. So I'll come back to that graphic here and put another picture up for you, and you can see these sort of laid out there. Here's the laryngopharynx right down here. This is where your vocal folds are in this picture, way down in the throat. You can see that little line there. That's where the vocal folds are. And there's a little chamber just above there, bordered inside the trachea, just before it exits out into the throat. And that spot is where the sound is emanated. That's where it starts from. And there's that little chamber there that gives this little extra acoustical boost. And it's the kind of thing that gives carrying power to a voice. For example, if I were to go off of the microphone just a little ways, you can still hear my voice okay, and you identify it as my voice, but the thing that's making my voice carry to the back of the room is that I'm tapping into that high frequency, and it's high frequencies that travel. So it still sounds like my voice, but it's the element of my voice that's up high that's giving it its penetration power. And incidentally, if that sound is produced down here in the bottom of the throat, and the tongue draws back into the back of the throat and blocks that opening off, it'll kill that sound. It'll absorb it, and the voice will lose its penetration power. So sometimes it has nothing to do, as a matter of fact, in good singing, it has nothing to do with how hard you push on your voice. As a matter of fact, the harder you push, the more you kill that tendency. It's really a game of learning how to line up the resonance chambers in your voice, get your tongue out of the back of your throat so that the sound that's already been put in there, already being produced, just has a chance to get out. So much of resonance training is learning to get your tongue out of your throat so that it doesn't block you up. The oropharynx, or the back, the space behind the tongue, that's a really important center. And the space, although this picture that I have up on the graphic doesn't show it, the space right in front of the tongue is also an extremely important chamber. And it can be kind of big or it can be kind of small, depending on whether you're singing with your mouth wide open or closed, whether your tongue is forward, as in producing an E vowel, or back, as in producing an U vowel. So your tongue moves around, changing the size and shape of those chambers, the mouth and the throat, and in the process creates vowels. I don't know if you figure that, but the little frequency thing that happens in front of your tongue, the chamber behind the tongue, each of those take that raw sound that's coming out of your throat and emphasize certain elements of it and filter out other elements until what's left is a recognizable vowel on a particular pitch. It's a really remarkable system that we've got. So you've got three resonance centers. And if this microphone were hooked up to a spectrometer, a machine that would show you the whole acoustical readout of my voice, what you would see would be a hot spot down at the, if I'm singing this pitch, there'd be a hot spot right there. And then, let's see, I'm going to choose a vowel, E. There'd be a hot spot down here. Then there'd be a hot spot up just a little higher. And then a whole big area where there's no acoustical energy of any kind. And then up about 2,000 hertz higher, about 2,000 pitches about higher, there'd be another hot spot. And then there'd be a third hot spot up there where that high frequency for the singer's ring is. And that'd be the acoustical energy of that E vowel. Yeah. Well, actually, since we've already established, I mean, it's clear in my mind, that most of what goes on up in here doesn't really have very much to do with singing. You say, oh, yes, it does. I feel it. When I sing right, I feel it in my bones. That's true. That's a subjective feeling. But in terms of actually getting resonance up in here, all of this flesh up in here is very absorbent. These are fleshy turbinates, 1, 2, 3 of them, and all they do is produce mucus. And that mucus then bathes and cleans out the dust particles and things that come into our nose. It carries it away, we spit it out or we swallow it, and it goes away. It's a way of cleaning us up. But there's nothing in there that's an acoustical chamber that's going to take the sound and enhance it. So sinusitis feels all blocked up through here, but the truth is that most all of the resonance is being done way below that point. It just is an aggravation to us, and therefore it makes us think that we got a problem. Okay, so you got these multiple chambers, and they're the ones that make those signs, and our task is to learn how to take advantage of those things. You can do that by training yourselves in certain ways. Vowels are the very best things that you can do to train yourself. For example, say for me the word please. Now watch what your tongue does when you say that. If your tongue is like my tongue draws back, spreads out between my molars. Does yours do that? Try it. Please. True? Okay, now what's happened is that your tongue, as it starts to move backwards in your mouth, it starts to move back in and start blocking this opening back here in the back. And as that happens, it has a tendency to muffle. If you were to also take your finger and put it underneath there and do it that way, you'd feel that muscle get stiff. Please. Now, say the word pizza. Pizza. Your tongue's in a different position, isn't it? If your tongue's like mine, it rolls forward in my mouth and doesn't draw backwards. See if that's true. Pizza. Oh, yes, that's right. The truth is that position, that tongue change position, is really helpful for singers. Because what it does is that it moves the tongue forward in the mouth, gets a big chamber right back here, and a small chamber right in the front, and that sets up the acoustical properties that will produce a really healthy E vowel with no tension at the base of the tongue. And lo and behold, as you sing up the scale on that vowel, the tongue doesn't get tight and you don't feel like you're going to crack. Whereas if you do the other way with your tongue drawn back and stiff, you start climbing up at about halfway through your scale, you're thinking, oh my goodness sakes, I'm going to die here because it's tight in my throat. So the trick is to say the vowels that you want to say without tightness in your tongue. And that's why I suggest to you that you'd be wise to learn how to sing vowels. Now let's take that E of pizza and say pizza, pizza, pizza. Now hang on to that E value, that E feeling, and I want you to match E and U. I'll do it once, then you do it with me. Can you hear that those two vowels match each other now? As compared to my tongue's moving all over the place and it's making an instability in my mouth. Now, unless I miss my bet, when you get on that U vowel, every one of you says, well, I hear a U, but it sure doesn't feel like a U inside my mouth. It feels real strange. Ooh. Now listen to the quality of that sound. Here's the normal American U. Ooh. It's hollow. Ooh. It's clear. It's got an upper frequency in it. And what I've done is taught my tongue to get out of my throat so that this little ring that's normally happening down here has a chance to get on out of there. And it takes pressure off the back of your throat. Now try this. E, pizza, Most people, when they do that, they do this. Yeah, the tape won't help, but I'm going to open my mouth and I'll say, You see my jaw is fixed and my tongue's waggling back and forth in my mouth. Well, every time it moves back, you know what's happening. It's starting to block you up. But watch, if I say, I leave my tongue in my E position and just slack my jaw a little bit, then the tongue doesn't go back and I get an A. But I guarantee you, you try it. Go ahead and try it. Stop on the A. Now, if you're like most folks, you say, that doesn't feel like an A. Yeah, I hear an A, but it doesn't feel right. But it's real healthy. It's really good. You're training your resonance tube to join itself together in such a way so you're getting maximum results from it. You can do that same thing with oo and o. Ooh, oh, 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 oh. See? It matches up. Now the other one is ah, and ah is kind of a bugger. You're going to go That isn't the way most Americans do that. We don't use our jaws that much. Normally we go and you can see by looking down my mouth that my tongue is going back and forth. Watch my Adam's apple. It's up and down because they're all of that motion. Well, no wonder there's some instability in our lives. Yeah, that's it. Just learn how to say your vowels and then your life will be equilibrium for the rest of your life. So you want to just go back and forth. You have an expectant look in your face. Okay. Right. She just looked expectant. Yeah. So that right off the bat is one of the ways where you deal with the tweeters and the woofers. Let me get back to those words because the tweeter part is this small chamber in front of your tongue. And the woofer is the behind part. If you think that you're getting a richer sound by drawing the sound deeper inside yourself, you're not. That actually makes it sound shallower. The more you get it out of your throat, the richer the sound will be. It's as if the further you get from the sound source being right here in your throat, the further you get to where it kind of finishes itself, the richer the quality will be. Some of the very best professional singers with whom I've worked, I've come up to them and say, how come you sound so, you're just a human being like me, but you got this rich voice, and I can't find that. And one guy said, well, Arden, I don't focus my voice here in my mouth or on the bridge of my nose. I imagine a focus point 10 feet out in front of my face. Oh, that was a novel notion to me. But the idea is that you have these little chambers built inside your body, the space in front of your tongue, the space behind your tongue. And if you can tune those things up, you can get both brilliance in your voice and you can get richness in your voice. Now that's the second time I've come at that, and this is important. I want to kind of draw this comparison. Remember back when we were talking about how to make a basic sound? I said if you're tight in your throat, you're going to get a bright sound, and it'll be kind of edgy. E. If you have a loose throat, you're going to get E, a kind of a warmer quality. That's different than what I'm talking about. E. Hear what I did? I made that darker. And actually, I want to play a game with you right now. I want to help you find 5 different placements. They're right here. List at the top of the page. In order to do that, you're going to have to use your hands. And I want you to come across the bridge of your nose. No, right down the tip of your nose. I said that wrong. Right out to the edge of your mouth and make a little megaphone. And then eventually to count to 5, and I don't want the sounds to go any deeper inside of your mouth than just that far. So, I will do it once, and then you will imitate me. This is sort of like Inspector Clouseau. So, I'm going to count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Would you join me, please? 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you want to correct your class up, this would be a good way to do it. That's a resonance pattern. It's a caricature. We don't really ever use that in real life, but it's still fun to play with. Now run your fingers back across the bridge of your nose and down along the smile lines or the frown lines, whichever you call them, out to the edge of your eye teeth. And that makes a little megaphone that goes a little bit deeper inside your mouth, but not much. And so go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you'll notice that some of the vowels don't do easily in that environment. O, the 4, 2, the oo, they don't sit there very well. You kind of have to cheat those. You have to modify them a little bit in order to get them to stay there. Drops at 3, and that's right, cheekbones right by the edges of your eyes and straight down across the roof of your mouth. So you get a megaphone that comes along here, splitting your face kind of in two. On the graphic, you can see that it comes right straight down the roof of your mouth, down through the middle. Count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, bring your hands back and find the little notch in your jawbone where your jawbone attaches. Now, all of the sound clear back through your molars, the whole of your mouth, is available for resonance. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For most of you, that's home base. That's where you talk at. True? Okay, that's true. The American language, American English, is one of the most throaty languages in the world. It's one of the darkest, held in the back. We don't know it because we live with it, but by comparison, it's a real dark language, and you just saw that. Out of the 5 placements, we're back at 4, and now we're starting to feel good and comfortable. Now drop behind your ears so that you got it clear back in your throat, and you want to count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, that's a kind of a caricature, Homer Simpson, and it's that kind of sound that you use for joking purposes. But 2, 3, and 4, you'll notice up here, are considered to be acceptable. 2, the more popular the music is, the more unsophisticated the music is, the more it's going to lean toward 2. Folk music is very much that way. Square dance music is very much that way. It's not meant to be pretentious. It's supposed to be just natural, unsophisticated music. Opera, particularly the way it's sung all the time, phony, is all pretentious. Whoa! And they get all deep back inside there. So somewhere between 2 and 4 are the acceptable ranges that we can use. And you can control that. We're going to sing a song here. I got the music right here. Because it's my country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Okay? But now I'm going to call out, let's sing it through once so that you're all comfortable with the words. We're only going to sing one verse of it. Ready? My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to do it again and sing the melody. Some of you guys are harmonizing in there, and you know, you square dance callers get really good at harmonization. Find the melody. This is also a chance for you to try that up and downy part. So go again with me, will you? Go. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. Time out. Incidentally, you just changed from the lower to the middle part of your voice. Listen to me do it once. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. It's now buzzing around in here. Liberty of thee I sing. Land where my father... And that's where everybody kind of goes, ooh, that's getting a little high. Tough. You just go. Join with me. And land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Now, put your hands up and let's go in those 5 positions. So as we start to sing, I'm just going to call different placements out to you. All righty? And you'll be really surprised. I want you to... So, number 1 is right here. That would be, making peaches of thee sweet. 2. 5. Now, you can hear, can't you? Why don't you come up and be an auditor and just tell everybody what you hear? Come on up. We're going to do this again, only I'm going to call the numbers at random instead of just from front to back as we go. I need to move out of the way. Yeah, this text is weird for you. Ready? We're going to start in a 2 position. 2. That's right there. 1, 2, go. 3. 2. 4. 2. 3. 1. Okay. Tell them what you heard on each one of those. What did you hear in number 1? That sound right at the end. What did it sound like?
High and bright.
Yeah, it's very, very bright. What did you get out of number 2?
That was, quite way down.
All right. What about 3?
Rather normal, clear.
And here, 4?
Mm.
Warmer.
Warmer.
Yeah. You all could hear it among yourselves, couldn't you? Thank you very much. What I'm trying to point out to you is that you have a lot of control over your own destinies. You can choose from one record to the next record whether you want that sound to sit bright and forward. There's nothing sophisticated about that. You just did it. You found that bringing the sound more forward did not make it more difficult to get the higher notes. Bringing the sound back didn't necessarily make it more difficult to find the higher notes or the lower notes. It's just a choice that you make. You don't have to stay put all the time. The more lively you want the tune to be, the more penetrating, the more energetic you want it to be, the more you want to bring it forward into that kind of number 2 position. And the more warm, romantic you want it to be, the more you want to bring it into a 3 or a 4 position. And how do you do that? Except holding your hands up in front of your mouth. Hang on. Come. You buy a microphone stand. Well, no, that's one thing, because you back off and put in. But I'm talking about inside your mouth. You can go anywhere from here to back there at great ease. It's all you have to do. It is primarily your tongue position. If you allow your tongue to stay up where it belongs, you'll get a brighter forward sound. Does that sound necessarily pinched? I don't think so. Does my country 'tis of thee, that sounds pinched? I don't think so. Sweet land of liberty, no, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land where my fathers died, land where my fathers... There are 3 different qualities there just by playing back and forward inside your mouth. And you have control over those things. So all you're doing is mixing tweeters and woofers. The more forward you get, it's like turning the volume over, the sound control over to high frequencies and low frequencies by emphasizing the space in front of your mouth or the space behind your tongue, behind your mouth. Now, in conclusion, all of those things have to be brought into some sort of balance with each other. Putting it all together, here's what I'd like you to get out of that. A vocal technique is something that's supposed to free you up to do what you really want to do. Many people who get started singing voice get preoccupied with the mechanics of how it's done. And for a period of time, it's as if the approach, the technique, is the end-all, be-all. And it's not the way it should be. But any complex activity starts out that way. I had a friend, for example, who was a concert pianist. And in high school, she was a wonderful pianist. But her friends would say to her, Joan, why don't you go out with us? We're going to go out this afternoon to the football game. No, I'm sorry, I got to practice. Well, Joan, why don't you come to the dance? I'm sorry, I'm in a piano recital or a piano competition. Come and have some fun with us. And she said, no, you got it wrong. I want the freedom to play the piano. And so I practice. And I can do some things that you can't do. You're not free to play the piano because you haven't done what you needed to do it. You went out and played for a while and had some fun, and if you call that freedom, then go for it. But my freedom is to be able to make beautiful music on the piano. That makes me feel free. but it's got to be at a price. So she had a good notion about what her piano technique was supposed to do. The facilities she worked into her hands allowed her to do magical things with the piano. Same thing is true with you and your voices. But don't ever let your technique become your master. You say, come on, I want a high note. And your technique says, well, you got to stand on your head and you got to pull your breath in and you got to do this. And pretty soon you're thinking, but this is hard and I want to sing a song. You say, oh, shut up, technique. Give me that song. I want to sing that song. I've given you the best years of my life. I give you 2 hours a day. Now give me something in return or I'm going to throw you out. You take charge of your technique. It's the servant, not the master. And all of those systems that I talked about, breathing systems, the vibration system, the resonance system, all of those things have to be brought into some kind of balance. And when you do, you'll come out with something that's absolutely unique.